What's up, Tamers? It's your boy Yong here, and today we are going to do the very first episode of TemDex. TemDex is a series that's aimed at providing you with all the knowledge that is required to be a better tamer in Temtem. So let's get to it. Today we'll do a very basic guide on building a squad or a team in Temtem. So what do you need to think about when building a squad in Temtem? Firstly, you need to know what your strategy is. There are a few basic strategies that are common in Temtem. For example, there is the stall strategy, the aggro strategy, and the mid-range strategy. There are other strategies as well, such as sleep compositions, freeze compositions, etc. So let me give you an example of what a stall composition may look like. This was my very first composition of building a team. Initially, I did not know much about PvP in Temtem, so I just threw in Temtems that I liked and wanted to play. So, for example, Lowali over here has no business being on this team. Neither does Inky have any business being on this team, but I just threw them in because I like the Temtems. The same thing goes for the Volcrane. And once I played a few games with these Temtems, I got an idea of what works, what doesn't work, what's popular, what's not popular, and then I built a second team. So if you are new to Temtem PvP, then don't be afraid. Just throw in Temtems that you like, build a team with those Temtem, and gain some experience, and then build another team after that. So what's the team I built after this? I'll show you. After this, I built my very first team, which was the stall composition. It was this one. This was the stall composition I made. So this was a stall team, and the cores on this stall team was Yowler, Wolfie, and Saku. This is an example of a stall team. It's by no means perfect, and a lot of things in this team is wrong and has many weaknesses, but I found a fair amount of success with this team. So that's an example of a stall composition. I'll go into depth in regarding the various strategies in Temtem in another guide, but for now let's just move on. So once you have picked your strategy and you know what your strategy is, you will have to pick Temtems according to your strategy. So for example, on a stall team, Kinu is like a staple on a stall team because Kinu is just such a good support and such a good Temtem for stall teams. For aggro teams, a good Temtem would be something like Amphitheater. Amphitheater is a very good Temtem for aggro teams simply because Amphitheater is very, very fast and it can pack a punch. It also has zero hold priority moves such as Plague, so it's very good on aggro teams. Now, mid-range teams, what's a good mid-range Temtem? Let's take Calibus for example. I've seen some top tier mid-range players play Calibus. So Calibus is a Temtem that can be thrown into a mid-range team. So this is one example of a Temtem that goes into mid-range teams. So according to your strategy, you want to think about the Temtems you want to pick. The Temtems need to be Temtems that fit the strategy well. For example, an Amphitheater in a stall team would be hard to play because Amphitheater is a very different Temtem that that excels in very different kinds of things. So a Temtem like Amphitheater might not be the best fit for a stall team, but people can experiment with it and maybe it could work. So don't be afraid to experiment with it. So when picking your Temtems, you need to think about certain things so that your team is actually working well to a certain point. The first thing you need to think about is why is that Temtem on your team? A squad has places for 8 Temtems, so you've got a limited number of Temtems you can throw into your squad, so it has to be very well thought out. So you need to think about why that Temtem is on your team. If you don't know why that Temtem is on your team, then chances are that Temtem will not provide you with a lot of value when you are playing PvP against other players. Once you know why your Temtem is on your team, you need to think about what is the role of your Temtem in the team. So for example, let's take Kinu. Kinu is a support Temtem with many utility moves as well as healing abilities. So in a stall team, Kinu's role is very clear. Kinu's role is to buff up the ally and to heal whenever possible. Kinu's role is not to deal damage. That's just not Kinu's role in a stall team. Whether Kinu does any damage in a match or not is irrelevant. What is relevant is Kinu needs to be able to get off the buffs and, if possible, get off a heal or two. That is Kinu's role, and as long as that is achieved, you have achieved value from Kinu. So in a stall team, Kinu's role is to buff and heal. That's all. So that is the role of Kinu. So likewise, you need to think about what the role of that Temtem is in your team. Once you've thought about the role of that Temtem in your team, you need to think about whether or not there are better options for that role. For example, let's say you've got a Wolfie in your team and you want Wolfie because of the plague. Now, are there better options for using of plague users? A better option for a plague user would be Amphitheater because Amphitheater is the fastest Temtem in the game. So chances are nothing will outspeed an Amphitheater's plague. Especially if the opponent also has a Wolfie and you have an Amphitheater, then chances are your Amphitheater will always go first before the Wolfie. There is no way a Wolfie will outspeed an Amphitheater with Plague, unless your Amphitheater has been debuffed by negative speed debuffs or something like that. That's a different story. But when a Wolfie and an Amphitheater go head to head without debuffs, it's there's no way a Wolfie is outspeeding an Amphitheater's Plague. So that's one thing you need to think about, if there are better options or not for that role. Once you've thought about that, you need to think about whom does your Temtem deal with and whom does it not deal with. For example, let's take Gialis. You pick a Gialis with the trait Mirroring. So Mirroring Gialis is going to deal with all Temtems that are using special attack moves, because Mirroring provides 40%, returns 40% of the damage dealt to Gialis as long as the damage was taken from a special technique. So a Mirroring Gialis would be fighting any Temtem that's using special attack moves. Whom will it not fight? Well, it'll not fight, for example, a Volcrane, because Volcrane does not have any, or usually Volcrane does have special technique moves, but usually Volcrane's not using them. For usually Volcrane's going physical attack. So a flaming meteorite from a Volcrane to a Mirroring Gialis is going to hurt a lot. So definitely Gialis does not want to fight Volcrane. Whom will it deal with? It'll deal with stuff like Kinu. It'll deal with stuff like Tulken. Even though Tulken does effective damage into Gialis, Gialis still would like to fight Tulken because of the Mirroring trait. The amount of damage Tulken deals to Gialis, it'll take just a good amount of damage in return as well. So Temtems like Kinu, 0B10, Tulken, these are the Temtems that Gialis wants to deal with. Any special attack Temtem, Gialis wants to deal with them. Gialis does not want to deal with Temtems like Yowler, Volcrane, and other such Temtem. So that's a definition or an example of whom does it deal with and not deal with. The last thing you want to think about is, what does that Temtem excel in? One way to know what a Temtem excels in is by looking at the stats. So over here we know Gialis excels very much in speed. Speed is what it excels in a lot. It's got the highest base stat it has is in speed. After that, it excels in HP and attack. It does average in defense and special defense, does extremely horribly in special attack, and does bad in stamina too. So it has stamina issues. So this is a way you can get an idea of what a Temtem excels in. Another way to know how a Temtem excels is by watching other players play. For example, you can watch tournaments, and from there you can know what a Temtem excels in. You can also look at its moves, the moves it has available, how much damage it does, what stamina, how much stamina it costs, the priority it has, the effects of those moves. So according to that, you can decide on what the Temtem excels in. And generally you want to use that Temtem in areas it excels in. This is not always the case, but generally you want to use a Temtem that excels in those areas, simply because you will get the most value out of it. So that's it for this basic guide. I will follow up with another guide that is more advanced, and in that I will show you how to allocate TVs for your Temtems, and I will also show a TV build, a, a TV build for a team I made previously. So do stay tuned for that, and I hope this guide was helpful. This has been very fun to make, so please do like, share, and subscribe. Bye bye.